Okay, trustees, we are live. We are recording. Phone lines are opened. Go for it.
Hi, I'd like to welcome everybody to the regular meeting of the East Hampton Town Trustees, September 23rd, 2024. I'd like to open with pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Marlene, can you do roll call, please?
Certainly. John Aldridge.
Here.
Francis Baum.
Here.
David Cataletto.
Yes.
Bruce Dalton. Here. Ben Dollinger. Tim Garneau. Jim Grimes.
Yes.
Julie Josephson. Here. And William Taylor.
Here. Okay. Matt, do we have anybody on the phone lines?
You have 0 callers. Thank you.
All right, so we'll start with public comment. First, we're going to hear from Natalie Mongan. She's proposing a beach measurement project. Can you come up to the... Thank you.
Hello, I'm Natalie Mongan, and I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about Beachright, an organization that I've created. So a little about me. I'm a senior at East Hampton High School. I moved to Amagansett when I was 2, and next slide. Sorry. And over the past couple of years, I've heard a lot about the Truck Beach court case. Next slide. So my research, I took an AP research class my junior year last year, which required me to create my own research that hadn't yet been done before. And for my research, I measured the beach at Atlantic over a 3-month period during the winter. During that period, there were significant changes to the beach. Storms and longshore currents removed large amounts of sand, and over the measurement period, approximately 50 feet of the beach was receded. Next slide. So for my research method, I used a pretty simple method with the aim that it could be easily replicated by anyone. I measured in a straight line from a post at the top of the beach to the main features of the beach, including the dune peak, vegetation line, rack line, beach crest, high swash line, and low swash line. The dune peak was stable and the vegetation line was not changed very much. The rack line, beach crest, and swash lines were mobile and changed frequently. Next slide. So this is a visual representation of the beach morphology and just where those lines land on the beach. Next slide. And so why it matters. We all know that the shoreline is constantly changing, but previously we had limited data about day-to-day changes and trends. With more data, we can better understand what is happening to our beaches, and better understanding will allow us to predict and plan for future conditions and potential responses, including sand replenishment and other possible actions. Next slide. So public access. Public access to the beach matters to me. I have been learning about many court cases similar to Truck Beach, such as the Lucas lots in South Carolina, all of which I studied for my research paper. I'm aware of the ongoing dispute about the right of the public to use Family Beach in the Peak. If private property owners successfully claim control over the beach, the public will lose its rights. The current law in New York relies on a mean high tide concept, which is what I studied, and I came to the conclusion through reading other scholarly journals that this concept is unworkable because it can't be precisely measured even by experts considering it's over a 19-year time period. It's always changing, and it's not visible to the public, so it's not easily accessible. Next slide. So Beach Right. Beach Right is the organization that I have created with a couple of my peers. And we have two goals: to involve the public in citizen science to gain knowledge about how our beaches are changing, and to advocate for changes in state and local law to preserve the public's ancient rights to use the beach. What we can do: generate many data points from beach measurements in multiple locations over a long term, and change local regulations to properly protect public rights, and seek statewide legislation to define oceanfront property lines in visible terms. So in other states, such as Hawaii, they use the vegetation line, which is another measurement that I took over my 3-month time period. And then in Rhode Island, they use the rock line, which is another example of different measurements that could be explored. Next slide. So what we need: we're asking for permission to install small 3/4 inch cup hooks on the following 13 beaches: Town Line, Beach Lane, Georgica, Main Beach, 2 Mile, Indian Wells, Atlantic, Napeague, White Sands, Navajo Lane, Kirk Park, South Edison, and Ditch Plains. And this is what the hook looks like. It's fairly small. And we would appreciate support in public education and advocacy relating to our goals. And potentially adding a QR code, maybe a sticker or something next to the hooks so that people know how to take the measurements. And that's all.
Where is the hook? Where is the hook placed?
It would go in, I don't know the proper terminology for it, but the post in front of
The orange posts?
the wooden gateway, or right in front of the parking lot that is just before the beach. So in one of the wooden posts there.
So you can attach a line to it and do the measurement.
Can you go back and say, look at Google Maps or Google Earth and replicate any of this for earlier years?
So I looked into a lot of the mean high tide data, and there isn't a lot for public record out here. So I imagine that on Google Earth, it would be the same, where it's not very reliable, but that is something I should think about.
Yeah, 'cause you can look, you can go back pretty far, and if you could see the picture of the beach, you might get a rough idea.
Are you aware of work that was done in past years by the high school? That there has been work done like this by the high school?
No, I'm not aware.
Minardi was a teacher, and I think he retired in the 90s, maybe sometime, but his classes measured Main Beach, the beach at Main Beach, for many years. So that is probably available somewhere in the school.
Okay, yeah, that is, I will definitely look into that.
Okay.
Sounds like a good project. Yeah.
I think so.
You know, ditch planes and stuff, you'd have to speak to the town.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is fine.
So can you explain to me exactly how your measurements are taken?
So the measurements were based, when I did my research project, they were based on visual ease. So instead of taking the mean high tide measurement, which is over a 19-year time period and very involved, and a surveyor has to come, and the same with mean low tide, I just used a 300-foot tape measure and measured from a visual perspective all of the lines that I was taking. So the vegetation line, the dune crest, the wreck line, the high swash line, low swash line, that kind of thing.
So how do they use these hooks?
So the tape measure that I use can just hook right onto the top of the hook and then just stretches.
Okay, so but you're using a post that's a fixed point?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
that point's been located and mapped?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not an arbitrary thing, because the only problem you have with your measurement methodology is what if somebody backs over the post?
That is true.
It'd be nice if you had something, on a road, something that is a point that could be, it could be some kind of landmark, something that's not gonna be removed or leave anytime soon, and hopefully something that shows on surveys or maps that weren't done by you. Maybe there's a survey of an adjacent property that shows it. You might be able to use, let's say you go down to the beach. I'm gonna use Beach Lane as an example. This property standing there may be a monument or something that is, let's say, one of the property owner's corner, and you contact that property owner, let them know what you're going to do, that you'd like to put a wood post in next to their concrete monument, because this is something that's actually, it's datum that's located, that's fixed, that you could pass your project on to some future researcher and have it be relevant and valid, because a simple post planted somewhere, it's temporary, it's almost ephemeral in things. Be nice if you could lock that in so that you really could measure, and it wouldn't necessarily have to be every area that you're recording, but at least something close adjacent that you could refer back to and use as a reference.
Mm-hmm.
At Atlantic, at the head of the beach, the traffic.
Excuse me 1 second. Whoever needs to speak, please come up to the podium. Thank you.
Step up and identify yourself.
Oh, sure, yeah, I didn't mean to butt in, but I'm Dan Morgan, I'm Natalie's dad, and I was just interrupting by saying that at Atlantic, where Natalie took her measurements, we didn't have any formal permission for her to do that. So we try not to, make much impact. Just put a tiny little nail in it's a treated 6x6, and that thing hasn't moved in 35 years that I know of. I mean, that's a post. Yeah. So for what it's worth.
Also, most of those beaches, they have those big posts up in the dunes that have the emergency numbers, for rescues or whatnot. So those might be an option too.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's an option, but you know what it is? All of these things are sort of movable objects in the landscape. So if you have one of those things, like you're talking about the post that's up at the beach end, you could get a fairly definitive location of that post, maybe by measuring off of 2 or more fixed points, so that, with just a compass on a map, you can locate this thing fairly accurately, so that, your information is more valid. Because yes, that post has been there for 35 years until somebody like me isn't paying attention and backs over the post.
Well, you're close to the ocean down there. When a storm comes in, smatters it all around. I think if you just looked at each beach with the idea of permanence in mind, you'd be able to pick, the most relevant place to do your work.
Mm-hmm.
And you should definitely come back when get some data and more results and let us know how it's going.
Yes.
Marianne.
Marianne, you want to comment?
Let me just, Marianne Eddy, 96 Hampton Street. You're making me think about the project that Pete Topping, who's the Peconic Baykeeper, if you know him. He's doing the chronologues. Are you aware of the chronologue?
Yeah.
Right, so that's the same kind of thing, and he's putting in a 4x4 post that's got like a little saddle up there where you can put your iPhone in and you're taking
Yeah.
a picture. and then you're sending it somewhere, but it's the same thing, and he's got this post in there that's not going away.
Well, it's not quite the same thing because it's, the problem with photograph, they're all based on perspective. So you can take 2 or 3 photographs from that same point, depending on the angle of the camera or whatever.
But
I know, we approved it. It
Okay.
came to us.
Well, I've used it, and when I put my phone there and you put it in there, it can't move. It's got a little,
I kind of like what she's doing here.
okay.
Let's not rain
I
on
was just
her
going to say
parade.
that there was
Mary Ann.
something,
You're up next.
okay. Not trying to push my way in.
So I'd like to make a motion that
I'd
we,
like to second that motion.
Aye.
Aye. Good luck.
Thanks, Natalie.
Thank you very much.
Hey, come to the largest clam contest on Sunday,
Yeah.
12 to 3, yeah.
I was in,
Oh, you have a clam
I was in
already?
Accabonac Harbor this morning,
Right.
and I'm not an expert clammer. And I got this enormous clam that I'd like to enter in the contest.
Yeah.
I put it on my scale. It weighs 12 ounces, so I think it might not be
Contender.
competitive.
That might
Yeah.
So that's gonna do it.
At least it's
To me,
better than
it's
nothing.
big,
Better than
right?
nothing.
You know, you're letting all the competition away.
for any harbor except Nat Peak, it might be competitive. A little inside tip there.
And the peak tends to, a lot of clams in there. A lot of
I think
big
they
clams.
keep those claims from
Yeah.
year to year.
They might, yeah,
Agent.
they might be sheltered for the rest of the year or something, stable.
Let's hope everybody's honest, right?
All right, thank you, Natalie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mary Ann? So Mary Ann Eddy's here to speak about the Sag Harbor Water Quality Initiative.
Right. Right. Mary Ann Eddy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for your time.
welcome.
You're welcome. You put the presentation up.
Send it to you. You told me I had to send it to you by Friday, I sent it to you.
Well, no,
Huh?
I thought you would, but I thought you included Allison
No,
on the path. Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Well, that's what happens when you depend on me. Sometimes it doesn't go.
Sending it to me?
I'm going to, yes. Just a sec.
I'm not rushing you.
Oh, that's okay.
Oh. That's great.
Assuming we'll get the presentation working.
You should have it, Alice. Shortly.
We have a short segment we could fill in. This takes
Yeah, we can
Allison
do
a
the
minute to.
Largest
I have-
clam.
A short thing about
Yeah, go ahead.
so I was noticing there's a lot of remnants of beach fires on the beaches, just the charcoal. And I saw people taking the fire bin that they're supposed to use. They have the fire, they have the water, then they pour the water in the fire, and then they dump the fire pit out.
Mhm.
So, because they don't know what to do, it's not specific enough for them. And I was thinking about getting a configuring something with a bucket with holes in it that could sit inside of the fire pit with the coals in that. And then they pour the water over that when they're finished, and then they can pick up the bucket and, it wouldn't be so cumbersome to handle. Something like that to give them guidance on
why, how you could possibly do this. Because I've seen people do it and they're really baffled. And then they say, oh, why did we do all these steps when we have to pour it out anyway? And I'm like, what?
The steps are so the hot ashes aren't on the
Yes.
beach when somebody steps on them.
Yes.
Well, we also don't want
No,
the,
we don't want the litter either.
Right.
I mean, it's,
But it's very, like I walked from,
they're all,
because it always comes back to,
Couldn't they just punch holes in the bottom of their container? Or, recommended diameter holes that would
yeah.
contain the ashes and contain the embers, but allow the water, when they went to put it
Right.
out, to just flow through.
I think people are
Some
trying,
ash.
but something like that would be very helpful.
I mean, the problem is these people don't want to take charred pieces of wood and put them in their car or do anything. If you put a container there for them to put it in, you gotta make sure it's not a fire hazard. Because a lot of that stuff looks out and 20 minutes later it's burning again. And people are not gonna carry it home if it's, half a burnt log.
I don't know.
Is there a way you'd have to put a receptacle down there for them to put the stuff
The
in?
village,
yeah, well,
I
that's
think
been
the
looked into
village
and that's
has you
a
leave the
problem.
receptacle on the beach and they picked it up. That was
I'm not
actually.
sure if they're still doing that. They may be, I'm not sure.
I see plenty of remnants of fires on the village beaches.
Okay, because they
Yeah,
were
it's
doing that
everywhere.
for a while and it was kind of handy. Yeah, because
Jim, is there any reason people in Montauk comply better with this?
No, they don't.
no, what we do is we in Montauk, we like to spread our ashes over as large an area as we can comfortably walk.
A couple of years ago, I went onto the beach right there by the first road end at the beach and looked down the beach and it was just black, 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 black. And what is that stuff? And I walked down a little bit and it's just burned logs after a storm.
Yeah. And when you see it floating in the water too, it's really just, that was, just wanted to bring that up if you have any
I don't
thoughts.
think Montauk's any cleaner than yours.
Okay.
It's just the
my
aspect
impression.
that you're looking at it from.
All right,
And
next, all right. Thank you for letting me come. I appreciate not only the opportunity to talk with you, but also the support that you've given this water quality initiative for the last 6 years. So, next slide. So these are just some of the conclusions that came from Chris Gobler's report that he gave us last April, based on the sampling that he did over the spring, summer, and fall of 2023. On average, conditions were good. The usual impairments, low oxygen, algal blooms, pathogenic bacteria, at levels exceeding state and federal guidance in some places at some times. And of course, the Haven sump is contaminating Haven's beach, but it's not really the sump, it's the pipe that empties into the sump, because we've done that testing right there before it hits the sump, and it's loaded with bacteria and high in nitrogen. Treating land runoff from the beacon has to be taken care of, and Windmill Beach. I'm going to be talking a lot about Windmill Beach, and I know that that's not part of East Hampton, but I think it's a good example of what we've done with the data and the energy and the effort and the money that we've been given. And we need to upgrade septic systems, nothing new here, and continue to monitor. Next slide. So this is Windmill Beach. It's right next to the windmill, right there next to Long Wharf, and it's so deceptive. And people like to bring their toddlers there, the little babies with their pails, thinking that it's nice and it's safe, and it's really lousy with bacteria. Next slide. So this is the fecal coliform bacteria, and if you look at the blue on the left, that's Windmill Beach. If you look at the brown on the right, that's the outfall pipe that comes all the way from the library, that comes down Main Street. The storm drains go into it all through the commercial district, and then it pops out under the water at Windmill Beach. There's one manhole right there by the windmill, and we get DPW, they come, they lift off the cover, and we grab a sample. So that's what's measured there is the outfall pipe. You can see it's got even more bacteria than the beach does. Not surprising, it goes into the beach and it becomes diluted. Next picture. Well, wait, go back. I'm sorry, do you mind?
It's not going to, unfortunately.
It's not gonna go back? Oh dear, all right. Okay, this one's good. This is fecal coliform bacteria, and you can see that the slides in the middle. We also checked the transient dock, because we're going, all right, is this bacteria coming from here, or is it coming from the boats? So we have Long Wharf South, Long Wharf Mid, and Long Wharf North. And you can see that they are all above the standard for fecal coliform bacteria. Next slide. And we do the same thing with Enterococcus. This is the actual beach, 40% of the samples over the limit. The outfall pipe, 80% are over the limit. And you can see here where it's coming from, part of the time is from Long Wharf. Next slide, please. This is Enterococcus. This is what Surfrider has done. This is all the way back to 2018. And you can see it's been pretty much constantly dodging in and out of the limit for all these years. Next slide. So this is the key. And this is what, so here we have the outfall pipe that's coming down into the beach. And you can see at the very top, there's a little ghosting red line. That's the human fecal coliform bacteria for the microbial source tracking. But here, you look at Windmill Beach, where the babies are, it's got a sizable amount of human pathogenic bacteria. And then here, Long Wharf, Long Wharf, Long Wharf, where the transient boats are, they definitely have quite a bit. So.
Is that pumping overboard?
Well, they could be, you know, or they could be leaving their Y valves open. So next slide. What has all this testing gotten to us? Next slide.
I have
So
a question about the microbial source tracking. How many times was that test replicated? The data that you're just showing, is that one test or multiple tests?
It was every date they're done on the bottom. Is it possible to go back to any one of those bar graphs?
About 6 or 8 of them.
Yeah, here you
This
go.
is,
Well, can you go back again, please? Right.
Those are the most-
So here's the dates up here. Oops, same dates. So it's from the end of June through the beginning of October.
but that's different than microbial source tracking data.
Mary Ann, did they do the microbial source on every one of those tests?
I think they take the ones that were the most, I don't know,
It's a very
actually.
expensive
It
test.
is- That's why,
It is.
that's exactly what I'm thinking. I'm gonna guess it was one test.
Yeah, I think it was one.
Well, I think they take the ones where there's the most bacteria there that they can test, but I could be wrong, and I'll ask and I'll get the answer for you. It costs us about $250 for every test, so it's not
Yeah, I
cheap.
think the
That's right.
microbial source is a bit more expensive than that,
Right.
because we've done that. It's not something you tend to financially want to duplicate that many times.
We've had similar results too, that the human element is very small, but when you get near an area there's boats, it's larger.
Yeah. And then this, I love this. I went to and asked them once a couple of years ago whether or not they had any Excel spreadsheets or something. I was looking at it, no, we don't do that, we keep them by hand. Well, I asked now about their, the harbor master, they're going around and they are examining, they're doing inspections on the boats. Next slide, maybe it's a couple more. Next, all right. So how many inspections? This year they've done 109 inspections on the boats and there were 2 violations. So they sent out postcards to let everybody know, I guess by the addresses on the registrations. And then they've got this, the inspections, they've got the dates, they have the tag numbers of the Y valves that they put on there. So looks good. I have my fingers crossed. Let's see what happens. See if we get any better results this year. Next slide. Please. Okay, so this is the other thing that it's gotten us. Doing this testing has gotten us grants. So we've gotten about $1.5 million for various green infrastructure projects around the village. And we have in the hopper, hopefully we're gonna get another 80,000 from Suffolk County. And we have from the Environmental Facilities Corporation, we have $1.5 million grant that's gonna go right up Bay Street. And this is gonna help with Havens Beach because it's gonna be in the way of much of the stormwater that ends up going into Havens Beach, into that pipe that goes into the sump. Next is this is the killer. So we have a $66,000 grant from New York State to look at the whole watershed for Havens Beach. And it is so slow going.
Now, what is green infrastructure consisting of?
It's rain gardens and it's permeable pavers. So a lot of Bay Street, if you come to Sag Harbor, you can see that the parking spaces are on top of green pavers. They are literally green, but they're also absorptions, and the cracks between the bricks, the pavers, are pervious. There's a couple of signs along Bay Street that show the actual design of, the bed that the pavers are put on and how it's used to drain and strain the water and filter the water. So it just doesn't go running into the bay.
That $1.5 million, where is that slated to be used?
So that pretty much starts, where there's the boat ramp there, where all the ducks are, sort of across from where our favorite restaurant used to be, Dockside. It's in there, and it's gonna go all the way past the breakwater, past the yacht yard, past Cor Maria, and a bit past going up towards the entrance to Havens Beach. But where there's this little fakey jitney stop? Somebody thought that that's where the jitney was gonna pull in. It's right in front of the breakwater. There's this little curly Q, and you go, what's that for? Well, somebody used to think that those big buses was gonna pull in there and that's where they were gonna pick up and let people off. Obviously not happening. So if we get this grant, we're gonna redo that whole thing, and we're gonna put some diagonal parking there. We're gonna put some all on permeable pavers, and we're gonna slant the thing down into rain gardens so that the water, rather than going the other direction, will come this way, directed into there. And it's also gonna capture some of the water that pools there during heavy rains.
So this is all for basically surface runoff,
Stormwater,
remediation,
yeah.
not necessarily that pipe, having anything to do with that pipe.
Hopefully what it's gonna do is capture water and direct it to groundwater before it gets into that pipe. Because that pipe is a lot where the stormwater that washes down through the neighborhoods, it all collects and it goes shooting into the sump. So what we're trying to do is capture some of it before it gets there, because that's really the conduit for a lot of the bacteria. But this study, we wanna look at everything from 114 north to see where that water is going and where are the catch basins and whatever that great, DPW has. So really trying to look at that and figure out how we can mitigate, where the pathogens and the nitrogen are coming from before they hit Havens Beach.
Now, Marianne, have you been testing those drain inlets?
The storm drains?
Yeah, farther, towards 114, see if there's any definitive hot spots.
No, we have not, but I think we were kind of waiting for this study so that we could then do this in a logical way. But that's what we've been doing across the village, is looking more at.
Because I see where all your testing is done more or less at the outfall or at the beach, but there's not a backtrack.
Yeah, that's actually, we are in Southampton. So we have one on Amherst Road. We found that Amherst Road, which is way over there in Redwood, had high pathogenic counts. So we went back and we're looking now at the storm drains that go into the outfall pipe. We're doing that.
Yeah, because sometimes it's evenly spread over the other, contributors.
Right.
But then sometimes you'll find one particular.
It's hot.
area.
Right.
That a lot of the stuff's coming from, either from a failed septic system or from some other source.
So we're also doing it at Cove Road, and then along Upper Sag Harbor Cove, there's 3-4 outfall pipes. So we're testing those outfall pipes to see if one of those is hot, because Upper Sag Harbor Cove and Moores Cove, when we tested them several years ago, not several, but 2 or 3 years ago, it's a very polluted area. So we're trying to see, are one of those outfalls hot? And then if one of them is hot, then we will backtrack into the storm drains.
Well, I don't want to hold you up on your presentation.
Oh, that's all right. Next, oh, wait, so this is the important thing, the blank there, I didn't have the number when I put this together on Friday. So that blank in the dollars is $17,406,165 of grants that we've gotten to expand the sewer service area in Sag Harbor. And that's going to do about overall 66 homes. We have homes that are down there close to the water where people can't do their laundry during a high tide. They can hardly flush their toilets during high tide. They're kind of sitting in groundwater. So those are our first priority. And that's where this 17 million is going. But some of it's already been spent on the design feasibility studies. Yeah. Then we just got bids in and they came in higher than we expected. But there's 2 that are probably workable. Pardon me? Next slide. So this is the other thing that this testing has gotten. It demonstrated to the village board that we needed to put some signs alerting people that there's water quality issues. So those QR codes go to a place on the website in Sag Harbor Village, and it shows like the water quality testing results. And then it also has the beach hotline there for Suffolk County, which tells you if a beach is closed. Next slide. So what do they say? Aiden Korish, who's the trustee who handles all these grants, especially for the sewer service area, he says every application has the Gobler studies, which is what we're talking about here, attached, and that working with him carries a lot of weight when we're going for these grants. And then in July 23, we were discussed as a champion for water quality in the evaluation of the PEP accreditation. Next slide. Sampling plan, we're going back to Amherst Cove, Sag Harbor, going to go back to Windmill Beach, looking at Havens Beach, and we've added the Azurist parking lot. There's a big outfall pipe there. Not so much that it's going to tell us that much about Havens Beach, but as you may know, the East Hampton people, the CPF, they gave us money for these rain gardens in people's homes, people's yards, and then they rescinded on it. So I have a possible another source of funding, but we need to have $1,500 and the cooperation of the neighbors. They're kind of done with this. They kind of don't want to hear about it anymore because it was back and forth and on and off. So I want to test this outfall pipe, and I'm hoping that I can demonstrate to them that this outfall pipe, which is coming straight from their yards, right their neighborhood, that it's really worth getting this back up again. Next slide. And this should be the end. This is the things that, Gobler recommended. We're going after the boats. We're going after signs, vessel discharge. Next slide. What's next? This is one of the things I'd like to do. I think we all know that there's proposition on the ballot to increase the Suffolk County sales tax by 1/8 of a penny. It's going to go into a fund that's going to fund sewers. It's going to fund IA systems. Right now, if you're waiting for, like I am, for a grant from Suffolk County, I've been waiting years. They tell you it's not only if you have to have a failing system, you have to have a system that's collapsing on itself. Nobody's getting money from Suffolk County right now. But when this hits the road, if it passes, that's going to be the first quarter. They're going to start collecting it the first quarter, and they will remit into the fund by the end of the March. And I want to be ready to roll. So we have like a spreadsheet that's been downloaded from Suffolk County Department of Health. It shows all the IA systems by tax map number in the village and everybody who's got an application. The people that have started an application haven't finished it. They obviously have some interest in it, and I want to go back and approach them and get them back in line.
Now, Mary Ann, that 1/8 of a penny, is that an additional tax on our 0.65%
Yeah.
sales tax.
It is.
And as Suffolk County written language in that increase in the tax, that absolutely guarantees that that money will not be pilfered for other purposes.
I don't know.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I know that was a problem before.
Yeah, so I have a sailboat in Sag Harbor in the breakwater on a mooring, and I'm at the dinghy dock like a few times a week, May through October. And it's right in front of that sewage processing plant, and the water there is brown, it smells, and you can see the discharge coming out, cloudy and brown. And the breakwater yacht, like the kids are always doing sailing, and they're like, don't fall in, that water is like poopy. And I know like you're just blaming the boats and stuff, but it seems like that's gotta be, I know it's treated, but like, that's gotta be a big source of,
Well, I don't have those slides, but I'll send them to you. If, I think I sent it all around to all the trustees, but maybe I didn't get it to you. Arlene, you're kind of going now. It was last April. Anyway, we test that. Not only does the DEC test it, like, I don't know, they come every month, but we test it. And we test it as the water is dripping over the edge, right? And it's gone through UV light. And all I can tell you is it's really low. I'll send you those slides.
yeah, I mean.
And the nitrogen level is like less than 3 milligrams. It's exceptionally low. And the fecal coliform bacteria is lower than any place that we test.
So
you have,
when you
like, a
say
complete list?
we test.
I'm talking about, we meaning part of the project, but it's the Gobler Lab.
Okay.
We parting the initiative, right? I know, so people say, oh yeah, they see like, solid matter floating in there. No, not really.
Yeah, I'm not saying that.
But the smell is intense at times, and I sail there every Wednesday, and I'm around there a lot. And, people don't want to hear it. And they go, well, it's when they're removing the sludge, and they have to open up these pipes and transfer it into the 16-wheelers that take the sludge off to Riverhead or wherever it goes. And also over at Marine Park, where the pump-out boats offload the pump-out into this big tank that's right there in Marine Park. They say that's when the smell is coming. But I don't totally believe that. I don't totally believe
Do you
that.
have a list of all the stuff they test the outflow water for?
Pardon me, what do they test the out?
Yeah.
So we tested for pathogens, we test the nitrogen. I don't think we do like dissolved oxygen. I've never seen that. But we're definitely testing it for pathogens, fecal coliform bacteria, enterococcus. I will send you that again. I will send those slides to you.
Thanks.
Marianne, you have more?
Just next slide. Not get it. All right. So we spend about $30,000 every year. About half of that goes for the microbial source tracking. And I just wanted to show that, you've been supporters every year. You've given us $2,500 the last 3 years. And I'm just wondering if we could go back up to 3,000. I'm very grateful for anything you give me, but that's my ask.
Marianne, you really didn't do yourself a service here, coming in the door and bragging about $17 million grants and stuff, and you're gonna try and shake us down for another $500.
But that's
I'm
what your
sorry.
$500 gets. It's get you these grants so that we can clean up our waters. It's leverage.
I'll tell you what, the issue,
I do appreciate it though.
I think, I'll tell you, we do have an issue with this.
Okay.
Because I think Allison can explain this better. Every year, we find ourselves basically getting hounded by Gobler's Lab to get paid because the partners in your water testing, I may not be explaining it right, but we're sort of, right now, the trustees have been sort of the bag man for the village of Sag Harbor. And I got to tell you, it eats up serious amounts of time with our people doing work for the village of Sag Harbor.
What, are you talking about getting the money from the other
Getting the monies from the
municipalities?
other participants here.
Okay.
We have been the ones that have had to do it. We endure the calls when Gobler's office is looking for their money, okay, and it hasn't arrived. Allison finds herself contacting some of the other participants on a regular basis. And honestly, I ask, why are we doing this?
I don't know why you're doing, you should tell me to do it.
No, we've mentioned this literally every time you guys have come to collect money from us. Why is it that we're handling the money? Because I'm going to be honest.
Because you're the only one
I
that
think
has an
we'd give
account.
you
'cause you've been-
$500 more if you do it yourself.
Jim, we're fronting the money basically because we have the ability to give it directly to Gobler.
But you don't give it before you get the money, do you?
But
It's the money coming back
Right.
to us from the other entities that promise money, that's the problem.
That are
Having to go
slow. They're slow payers.
chase them down.
Yeah.
Well, I'll do the chasing. I didn't realize
Well,
that
actually, you
was,
could do your own chasing.
I could do my own chasing, but I can't do my own transferring to Southampton or to Stony Brook.
I don't know that the other municipalities can transfer money.
No, they can't.
No,
Okay.
yeah,
Well, if they can't, hey, Mary Ann, not for nothing. Let's go back to the crux of this thing. You got $17.5 million. I think this is going the wrong way. I think there's got to be value to the service that the trustees provide to you as an enabler for these other things. So I'm going to ask you if you could kick back $3,000 to us, the trustees.
No problem. But I'll send you some really nice clean water once we start getting,
And we want the clean water, certainly.
all right?
Does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion, we contribute $3,000.
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you so much.
Marianne, if I could just comment on one thing.
Yeah.
The rain gardens in, I'm not sure if it's Azure Est or Nineveh, or which of the subdivisions they're in, that were asked for more and were rejected by the Water Quality Committee.
Yeah,
We're represented on the Water Quality Committee, and I think if you can, one of the problems that the committee felt existed with these rain gardens is there's not a lot of data supporting how well they're doing taking pathogens and bacteria out of the system. So I know you talked about wanting to do some testing up there, and I would encourage you to.
so here's the thing, the pity about those rain gardens that they shut down, we had actually put a flow meter on the storm drain and the outfall pipes there at the Azure Est parking lot. And so we have all that data to try to see if we can compare it to after the rain gardens were put in, how much it was decreased with the installation of the rain gardens. But we can't do it. I mean, we have the before picture, but we don't have the money to put in the after picture. And I do have, and I'll send it along with this, one thing that shows, it's from something in Minnesota, but it actually shows like bacterial content before and after rain gardens. You're looking at me so skeptically, but it's something.
Hey, Mary Ann, I build stuff like this, okay? And your comments are sort of broad stroke. And the rain garden, it rolls off the tongue nicely. But things like, if you're going to call them rain gardens, they're based proportionally on the volume of water that you're handling, okay? Many of these rain gardens, I want to say, are feel-good token gestures, which truly, going back to John's comments, don't affect much of anything, primarily because they're not sized to actually handle the amount of water that actually is going through them. So, simply calling something a rain garden and planting a few facultative wetland plants around the edge of something doesn't, by virtue, do anything measurable on it. So when you're talking about the rain gardens, I'm going to be honest, I don't know what the hell you're talking about because I don't know how big the area is. The watershed that you're trying to drain, how much water's going through there, what the calculations were on how much water would be retained, picked up, held for a period of time before they were discharged into the area. So if I'm the guy writing the check for something like this, yes, I'm going to be very skeptical about it, because you know what? There's many of these projects where really we throw good money after bad, and nobody gets disillusioned more than when monies get spent and there's no measurable return on that investment.
Well, I think in terms of a measurable return, you know, that's one of the reasons this thing in Azurest is a pity, because it would have been something that could have documented a before and after picture. I know the rain gardens at Havens Beach, after a big rain, they are like up to here in the rain that they capture, and then in 48 hours, it's gone. So it's something.
But you know, that was a design system. That wasn't, I don't know, you're bringing up a project here that it's kind of like, you ever see those advertisements in the back of a horticulture magazine?
I don't read those.
Super Thrive. Okay. 1,000 cuttings were used. Super Thrive was used on none of the cuttings died. It's meaningless. There's really there's no meat.
Well, I think I'd quote Aidan Koresh, because he's the one who started the whole sewer thing, and I was like, oh, this is never going to happen, and here it's happening. He says, how do you eat an elephant? You eat an elephant one bite at a time. And I think that that's sort of the same thing with rain gardens and the rest of the green infrastructure. I don't believe in silver bullets. I don't think there's any big technology that we can like flash there on Bay
This is a pitch
Street.
to make to us.
Huh?
I think it's more of a pitch to make to the Azurest community.
Yeah, I think that data, if you have before rain gardens were installed, and all you're waiting to do is get after data.
No, we have to install them, but the money got dried up. But I think I have another source, but we need like a $1,500, like, look, see what it is to present to the other source. But that's why I'm collecting data from Azurest right now, from this thing, to demonstrate to the neighborhood that there's some really lousy stormwater that's coming down from your yards. And hopefully that might pique their interest so that we can get this back going again. But they were just disgusted. So I don't know. I haven't met with them personally, but that's what I get from Steve Williams and whatever. But thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
All right.
Very good.
Have a nice day.
Thank you, Mary Ann. All right, move on to new business. Special events on town beaches. So the season's winding down. The town issues permits for special events. The village issues permits for special events. We also issue permits for special events. And each of us have different requirements for those permits. So I was hoping to put together a committee to review all those and see if we can update ours in a way that might be more comparable with the town and the village.
Well, the village just redid their special events thing, so I think there's some certain amount of templating that we can use from that.
Right. So we have to look at it and compare it to what we have and figure out which directions we want to go.
Okay, so who do we want on the committee?
Who wants to jump?
Well, I'm on beaches, so I'll be on the committee.
Okay, one more.
I'll join.
Okay, Treese. All right.
Well, I'm a lawyer, so you might as well include me a little bit here too.
That was easy.
You're looking for $500.
All right. Wayne Scott, Georgia launch ramp at pull-off cleanup.
Yeah. Hey, this is something, guys, this is something that came up a year ago. We approved putting some riprap gravel in there so that basically you can get a boat down
Is
into
this,
that
this
area.
at the rest area?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and it never got done. The area's gotten somewhat overgrown. We're coming up on hunting season here, and I was looking to try and preempt some of the hunting community calling us, which is coming, and to deal with this. So what I was hoping to get is a nod from the rest of this board to go out and get some pricing on this and get back.
Can you describe exactly what it is? On Saturday, I went to the cleanup, the litter committee, and the town litter committee, and also people from Waynescott did a cleanup around Georgica Pond on Saturday. And there were a couple of squares that almost look like carpet squares, but that's not.
Oh, yes, that's the remnants of, I think, who the hell put those in? I think it was when
Main Beach.
Main Beach Surf Shop did that years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's
So-
kind of heinous.
Yeah, describe exactly what you would.
Basically, you know what happens is during the hunting season, and I think some of the baymen may use it occasionally, is, you know, it's a little John boat on a trailer. It's not big. To be able to back the boat down there when the pond is high, launch it from there and get it out. And, you know, there is a practical issue here at play of, in the event there's any sort of an emergency on Georgia, that is a pretty patent and neat access point to that cove.
Would it
and
be
it-
permanent or just for the out of season?
I ain't picking the gravel up after it's put down, no, permanent.
Okay.
But it's not gonna be any, there's no artificial turf as part of this, just something to firm up, because right now, what happens is that there's that asphalt, and then it drops about this far to what the grade is. It's just to tune up that grade, so somebody doesn't lose basically their truck or trailer into this thing.
I see.
Yeah,
We're not looking to make this a launching ramp for like fishing and a lot of use. This, you know.
yeah, we approved this last year.
Yeah, and you know what? It never got done. The season came to an end, and nobody's brought it back up to me, but I'm sure it's coming.
All right. So you're gonna get some pricing?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that something Friends of Georgia Association could pay? Friends of Georgia could pay for?
It's our pond.
It's kind of an access issue.
It's a public access. I'm not sure. It's a little like the $500 shakedown. It's not, doesn't necessarily make sense to go to the, you know, Friends of Georgia, because they do, you know, realize they're spending a lot of money on projects like that algae harvester and other, you know, programs there.
I got you. Yep.
This is not going to be a big ticket number. I think it's something.
I think isn't there some kind of a larger
Yes, there is.
proposal there to get the state involved?
There is. There's
Refurbish that
a whole thing,
whole
but you know
off
what?
area.
That we may be several years away from. This is something that can be done pretty expeditiously and sort of tide us over.
All right. Old business, resolution to delay the opening of scallop season.
Yes, so I think we discussed this last meeting.
And you've distributed the,
It looks good.
yeah, I think you did a great job.
I think we need to vote on it tonight in order to
I'd
avoid.
like to make the motion to approve it as the latest iteration.
Second.
You better read it.
I think you have to, John. We trust you.
I think I'll read
I
it.
think you should read it.
2024.
What did you do to it?
Regarding delaying the opening of scallop season in Trustee Waters until November 10th, 2024. Whereas Chapter 213-18 of the East Hampton Town Code recognizes the East Hampton Town Trustees' authority to set and vary the permissible dates for the taking of scalps in trustee waters. And whereas Section 213-12 of the East Hampton Town Code permits the taking of scalps from trustee waters between the third Monday in October and March 31st in each year. Whereas for the year 2024, the state of New York has set the opening of scallop season in state waters as of November 4th, 2024. And whereas in order to permit additional time for scallops to spawn and mature, the trustees have traditionally opened trustee waters for scalloping shortly after the opening of state waters. Now therefore be it resolved that despite the provisions of Section 213-12 of the East Hampton Town Code, scallops may not be taken from trustee waters between 12:01 a.m. on Monday, October 21st, 2024, before sunrise on Sunday, November 10th, 2024. Alternatively, the 2024 season for taking of scallops from trustee waters shall begin sunrise on Sunday, November 10th, 2024, and end at sunset on March 31st, 2025. Be it further resolved that except as set forth above, all other provisions of Chapter 213 shall remain in effect. Further resolved, this resolution shall take effect upon the filing of same with the East Hampton Town Clerk and posting as set forth in Section 213-18 of the East Hampton Town Code. The order of trustees of freeholders and commonality of the town of East Hampton, Francis J. Bach, Clerk of the Trustees.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And just for your information, the town board has set a public hearing date of, I think it's October 3rd, to hear the change in the code language, which would, for here on and evermore, set the opening of scallop season to the Sunday following the Monday of the state opening. And that process may not finish in time for all these dates to coincide, which is why we had to pass this resolution.
It should be the last time.
This should be the last time. Unless we want to change the season for another reason.
Okay, thanks, John. Horseshoe Crab Working Group update.
Yeah, there was a meeting. I don't, did anybody go to that meeting, person?
I thought all of you guys went to it. No, I didn't go.
I zoomed into it, but I didn't know who was in the actual physical meeting. But there were some interesting things I thought that came up. So I'm just going to kind of go through this really pretty quickly and outline what happened. So Matt Scalfani gave a basic biology update first. John Turner, this was kind of sponsored by PEP, CTUC. This working group has been put together to look at, issues with horseshoe crabs and, what can be done to enhance their populations or prevent them from further degradation. But John Turner, I think he's from CTUC, described the importance of the migratory bird population and their need for horseshoe crab eggs for sustenance.
Talking about the red knots.
Red knots primarily. Yeah. And then there was a fellow from USGS, a retired USGS researcher named Dave Smith, who it seemed, I'm not familiar with him, but he seemed to have a long history of working on the remediation of the horseshoe crab populations in the mid-Atlantic. And some interesting things he brought up were the synthetic LAL, which is the substance that is used in biomedical research, is now apparently approved by Maybe not the lower levels that needed finally to be put into production, but at the higher levels, which were higher levels of regulatory agencies that were necessary to move this thing forward. So they've been approved. It's been approved by some of these larger agencies.
Was he with the Pharmacia working group that was working on moving this along?
I'm not sure.
Because there is a working group that works with the pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah, I'm really not sure about that. He just mentioned that, he mentioned the agency or the organization that finally approved it, which was sort of the largest organization necessary to, I think it might have been. It sounds familiar.
Yeah.
He also talked about how a harvest, meaning I think meaning mainly a harvest for bait harvest by fishermen, is sustainable in a large, healthy horseshoe crab population. We don't necessarily have a large, healthy horseshoe crab population around here, but it is sustainable in a healthy population. Recovery relies on harvest regulation, but habitat loss should be the focus. And that kind of mirrors what we were talking about in the last meeting. That habitat loss is very important here. And a lot of effort is being put into, reducing the harvest and the take. And not that much seems to be being done about reversing habitat loss.
And honestly, John, this is just locally. I know they've been monitoring populations farther west for a long period of time, but we've only been monitoring our local populations here for about 10 years now. And if we're going to make some conclusions on sort of the data we've collected, I'm just going to go 3 years. There's been more horseshoe crabs. We're seeing more horseshoe crabs every year. I think it's cyclical. I think that's part of the cyclical.
Kind of addressed that.
Yeah.
And as you're, I think, alluding to here, you need enough data to say something. And apparently they review the data every 10 years. So what he said he could say is that the population in the last 10 years is stronger than the population in the previous 10 years. And I think the next 10 years, which will give, another reading of the population that, which will include our data, is due in 2029. So
you'll have 30 years.
Really not able to determine the health of the population except looking at it in 10-year chunks.
And where are they observing the population?
Well, we observe the population at Napeague in Northwest.
Right.
We're part of the Peconic, the general
Pikes
Peconic.
Beach. There's several other places that they monitor, they tag, they've been looking at for far longer than we've been doing it.
So it's only Peconic Estuary? Is that it?
No, they're doing it.
In New York, it's the North Shore, the South Shore, the Peconics, and I think there might be an area they call in the city, like Jamaica Bay.
Okay.
And Jamaica Bay has been shut down to horseshoe crab harvest for a while. Now, they don't allow any taking there and haven't in a good while.
So anyway.
So they're saying now what did he say? It's a stronger population?
Well, the population in the last 10 years is stronger than the population in the previous 10 years.
That means more?
Well, and you know what? These things, when we first went in to get indoctrinated for doing this work. They talked about whether it was El Nino or La Nina. One of the horseshoe crabs, they say the population sort of ride, or breeding activity sort of rides with, weather cycles. So it's expected that you're going to see rises in fall. But, right now we're looking at it in a time frame that's fairly narrow,
So in terms of habitat loss, there's data from Japan, reliable data showing a 90% loss of the horseshoe crab population as a result of coastal development. The driving on the beach was a topic that was discussed a little bit. His input here was that driving on the beach is probably okay after about mid-July. And somebody who was in the meeting in person, I think from the state park, said that they've restricted beach driving in the water fence area, during horseshoe crab breeding time. Let's see. Okay. So then that was sort of points that he made. Then Jennifer Lander from the DEC made some presentations. Apparently the AFMAC, which I'm not sure what that is, but it's sort of the regional, made up of several states, the organization that looks at horseshoe crabs, set a restriction on harvest for New York of 300,000. The DEC voluntarily reduced that number to 150,000. I think this is over the last few years. This is not just this year or not just for next year. This has been the case for a couple of years.
The only thing that was new this year is they prohibited the harvest on those couple of moons.
Those moon cycles,
Yeah.
That's right. So another piece of data that was interesting was that in 2024, only 120,000 of the allowable 150,000 limit was recorded as having been taken. So DEC voluntarily reduced what New York could take by half, and then that take wasn't even reached.
Well, that doesn't surprise. I don't think it should be a surprise to any of us, because there's fewer guys doing this stuff.
The Peconics represents 10% of the New York harvest. So Peconics is a very small part of what's being taken. Horseshoe crabs being taken. Benchmarks are set every 10 years. The next is in 2029. Our monitoring data will fit into that. Okay, so then Matt Scafani talked about the spawning survey that we're involved in. The point there, Peconic has the lowest spawning index of all New York regions, which is North Shore, South Shore, and New York City area. So spawning here is not as robust as it is in other parts of the island. And then let's see, Matt also talked about threats and conservation issues. Oh, and this was interesting. Somebody from the DEC, who again was there in person, I'm not sure who it was, pointed out that the legislation came up. DEC chimed in and pointed out their opposition to the legislation, basically on behalf of the local fishermen, which surprised me. They favor the existing regulations. Also pointed out here was that habitat loss needs more attention, shoreline hardening, some living shoreline designs, dredging, shoreline development, some of those problems. And then finally, Joyce Novak talked about the PEP Shoreline Adaptation Initiative, which is, Patrice and I attended a meeting, which is part of that, to get a handle on what the different boards were, how they were regulating shoreline development. And they talked about the modeling that I think Patrice talked about at the last meeting that they're doing and interested in doing. So those were the kind of points that I thought were of interest to the trustees, mainly the DEC's opposition to that complete ban on harvest and the importance of habitat destruction. That's being, not addressed enough, so.
Thanks, Jim.
That's it. Anybody want to comment?
No, I think that was great, John.
Okay.
I'd just like to comment that I have mentioned this a couple of times before. I'd like to pursue, in our domain where we think it might be appropriate, looking at, holding off on beach driving during the horseshoe crab spawning cycle. And it seems as though I didn't bring it up, but there were other points of discussion about, well, how long, what is the total time period between when they actually lay their eggs and when the eggs hatch out and are now gone into the water column as larvae. And that seems to be from, when our surveys begin, because that's kind of the earliest spawning. That's what, mid-May, I think it is, that we start. And egg laying is pretty much over by the end of our cycle, which is getting to about, maybe mid to later June. And then
Mid-June for my area. By mid-June, it's over.
Yeah.
It doesn't fall off gradually. It just,
right.
like even this year with all the numbers we had on the counts, when they were done, you went from counting 1,000 to you counted 500 to you counted 25. It just.
I just looked it up. It says it takes 2 to 4 weeks for the eggs to hatch. So when we see that, like the height, it's about 4 weeks that they're.
Where do they lay the
Ideally,
eggs?
be 4 weeks that we close the beach.
4 weeks about from when spawning seems to taper off and end. So you're really talking about mid-July. You could open the beach. If you close it, you could open it back up around mid-July.
The intertidal activity. So I'm guessing the eggs, I'm guessing, hatch on a high tide.
Oh, they talked about a lot of little things that can happen. Apparently the larvae can survive in the sand
until they get a tide that allows them to.
And sometimes they can even overwinter. These are kind of real, splitting hair kind of things, but.
Out of every 10,000 eggs, only 6 will hatch. Things don't get any easier at this point. So it's a really high mortality rate, right?
Yeah. So, we have some data from the beach over by Mile Hill, which is a drivable beach. And, there's some, I think it might be wise to get together some people from the town. And I think there's I don't know, you might know better than I do. Isn't there a Grace Estate Management Committee?
I know it used to be. There used to be.
sit down and, talk about maybe using that as a test case to see what kind of resistance we get from.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's not a big driving area over there, is it?
No, I don't think it is, but I've walked that beach, to do the surveys, and there is driving there. And it just takes one truck to go down and back. Those ruts, until those ruts become.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, this is my observation in Lazy Point, is where a significant amount of the breeding occurs? In the tire tracks. It's kind of a natural spot for them to settle in.
Until the next truck drives by.
Exposed, but.
So do you think that's the best spot to start discussion?
Well, I think I'm expecting there to be, pushback, and I think it's a spot we have looked at, we've worked in, we have data for, and so we know there's what's going on there. I don't know what's going on in the rest of town.
Oh, we did just have the best count this year, so maybe it's not a problem with the trucks on the beach.
We didn't count that beach this year. We're only counting the beach in Northwest that we're counting.
Trucks can't go on that section.
It's not driving beach. That big site is a
portion of it is. About half of my.
But you had a good count.
Half of my area
Best count
is.
Yeah, we both had the best counts we've ever had.
I have seen those black rocks, they were putting down so that the trucks could go on and off the beach at Mile Hill. I think I've seen them again. Somebody must put them back.
We put them in.
Well, the highway department put them there, and they cover them with sand.
Oh.
So maybe the sand's washed away, and that's why you see the rocks again.
I thought they removed them.
No, they're permanent.
They cover them up every spring with sand. Usually by the fall, it's washed away.
All right. So what exactly are you proposing? How are you proposing to look at this?
I guess right now I'm just proposing that we gather other interested parties, who might have natural resources, I don't know, maybe Nature Preserve Committee, like I said, that whatever management committee exists for the Grace Estate. I'm not sure who has what jurisdiction over what, where, but I would think there would have to be a meeting of the minds in a committee site situation before anything was proposed to any regulatory board.
Anybody opposed to that?
No. All right, I'll reach out to Natural Resources and maybe who's active on Nature Preserve? You guys
Even I are both on it. And that's strictly an advisory.
Yeah.
Start on that level. It's just a letter to the town board that comes out of the committee.
But they might have some input, I think Natural Resources is going to be advisory too, to the town board, so.
Yeah, I can bring it up.
Okay.
All right. Mosquito larvae count season summary.
Oh, yeah, real quick. I went out last Tuesday and there was really nothing out there. Everything was pretty dry and the tide hadn't really come up yet. Things have cooled off. But I got a summary of the season from Tom Iwaneco. There were only 2 treatments on June 12th and June 26th. There were 2 other weeks that showed enough larvae to warrant a treatment, but either fog delay or precluded the helicopter from flying, or in another situation, there was scheduling problem with the helicopter. So those 2 weeks weren't treated either. So there have only been 2 treatments this past season. It was a fairly.
Those 2 dates are?
June 12th and the 26th. So early in the season.
So all of June, they wanted to spray, pretty much.
Those two weeks.
Well, there were 2 weeks they treated. There were 2 weeks that they wanted to but didn't.
That's
So
later in the season.
well, that
I'm not sure
my question was, what were those dates?
I'm not sure. Oh, I see. I don't know what those dates were.
Okay,
I could find out.
I'm just curious.
They were around that time, though, early in the season. It might have been in June, it might have been in July. But it was a quiet marsh season, tide-wise. The highest tides this year seem to be predicted to be over the winter, and next season looks like it's going to be a similar cycle. Not very extreme high tides in the summer. So expect some quiet season next year too.
I think you mentioned there was going to be a very high tide.
Well, this last cycle was going to be the highest predicted tide of this season. And then this easterly wind, that offshore storm blew the easterly wind in for 3 days. So it was a very high tides in the marsh this past week.
All right, blue-green algae updates.
Yeah, okay, since the last time I talked about this on September 9th, there was a high reading in Pond Lane, 93.7. And 2 days later in Wainscott Pond, there was a high reading, 494.9 milligrams per liter. Micrograms per liter. And
First one was 90. And the
93.7. That's in Pond
was
Lane.
over 400.
That's in Wainscott Pond. Yeah. Wainscott Pond's been in the 400 to 500 reading all summer
I
long.
wouldn't want to live around that cesspool.
And then on the 17th or the 18th, Wainscott Pond was again 485.6. And there was a reading, a very low reading, but over the threshold in Fort Pond, the southern part of Fort Pond, 33.5. So I'm not sure if these are the last readings of the season or if they're going to do more, finish out September. I asked a question, but I haven't gotten an answer yet.
They should start dropping, I think. These cooler temperatures.
Wainscott Pond didn't. But it's been warm up until last week or so.
All right, committee reports, Accabonaca Creek, the Old Stone Highway Culvert Project.
Yeah, I can update you on that. They presented the project to the town board. We've already issued it. This is exactly the same project that we issued permit for in November of 2023. And it will expire in November of 2024. So they haven't started yet, but they have the person who's going to do the project identified. Don't have a signed contract yet. And then from the signed contract, they'll need 5 days for that person to give the detailed plan with the timings. The project team is confident that 1 year project will be sufficient. They're pretty sure about it. So they would like to apply or request an additional 1 year on that permit.
Well, but they haven't put in for it yet.
No,
have they? No, so,
because they still have time on the other one. What would you do? Would you wait for that one to elapse or?
well, I would do it before then, but,
Okay,
we would
That
discuss.
permit, who was that, Natural Resources?
Who's it from? Yeah, who applied?
That Jedlicka of the engineering.
Jim Peterman from LKMA.
Oh, okay.
I think it was Jim. It was somebody from that
Yeah.
company.
Yeah, so would we just extend the current permit? Or
I
would
just
we-
extend the current
Yeah.
permit.
You should just extend
They
it.
should ask us first.
Right, they have to ask us, but
It's exactly the same project. When you look at the diagrams, it's same.
yeah, but they have to submit.
Yes.
Okay.
So they will do that. I just wanted to kind of give you a heads up. It's coming. And did you take a look at the culvert?
Yeah, man. Looks like ancient Roman aqueduct.
Harbor Management request from the Clearwater Beach Property Owners Association. to
Yeah,
renew.
they've put in the application to do their annual dredging down there. Again, this year, the DEC permits current. The only difference that they've asked for this year is, in years past, they had gotten to a point where they were storing so much sand down there. Got ridiculous. They've used all that sand up, so the bunker that they store the sand in is empty. They'd like to basically exercise their right to hold 500 yards to be used around their bulkheads if needed. And the only other thing it's not really a conflict, but they said that they're probably just going to do the dredging from the Clearwater side this year. They will not be dredging over on the Lionhead side. So,
You know where the sand went that they were stockpiling?
in their bunkers,
In their bunkers, yeah.
it went in their area, people that had projects, I guess, in their area where they used it along their bulkhead. I mean, if the sand comes out of our bottom, we should be getting paid for it. So that this stuff, the stuff's gonna be stored, stockpiled, dewatered in the piles. They pay to have somebody measure those piles. Saskis did it, I think, last year. They make the payment to us based on the amount dredged. Their permit allows them to sit on some of that sand. So there's no real conflict on our end. for
Well,
them.
once they pay for it, it's
Yeah.
theirs to do what
Yeah.
they choose, right?
Yeah.
More or less.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. The only question I had, it's got nothing to do with, nuts and bolts of this. It's just with our process. Are we comfortable with when people, sometimes, we give a permit and then for a year, and then we get another application for the next year. We're being asked to extend that permit or to
No, they're just
renew
applying.
that permit?
No, they're just applying for the permit
But they're
again
doing,
this year.
they're doing
But
it
they're-
just with a letter. Should we be,
No,
is it,
no, I think we've got an application here. So we have the letter, but I think, hold on.
Yep, yeah.
I was on some of these emails and my understanding was they were just reapplying with a letter.
All I have is the letter.
Because I'm just looking at the file here. I see the application, but I don't see the date on here. Arlene, did they actually put an application in?
No, they put the letter, I thought I put it in there. It's definitely in Francis's.
No, I have the letter.
John
But did they put an application in?
Not this year,
No, just a letter.
just the
Yeah,
letter.
I think I
We have the DEC permit, it's valid till
Yeah.
2033. From other people, we've just taken letter renewals we've been doing all along this
I
year.
mean, we have their
Last year's permit.
last year's permit. They're looking to do the same thing.
It was just sort of an administrative question. Are we allowing, are we trying to be consistent with how we're administering this stuff or?
How long do we continue to renew?
Well, they've got a DEC permit that's good for another, they just renewed it last year. It's good for another 10 years.
Okay. All right.
I mean, you can ask them,
I'm assuming
you
they're
can
only
ask.
asking for a year renewal, right?
Yeah.
They're not asking for a renewal.
So I mean, you could ask them to just go through the process, essentially photocopy last year's permit and change the dates on it, if that.
Well, unless there's anything drastically changing,
No, the
there's
only
probably
thing,
no reason.
no, the only thing that
How
was.
do we know, how do we know if there's a change or not?
Well, I mean, how do we know when they fill out the application and they've changed something too? I mean,
Well, for example,
we
they're
have the,
when, is it in the letter that they're asking for to stockpile the 500 yards or up to 500 yards? Because that is, was that
I'm
just?
gonna be honest, I think we got the letter before Ken Neary called me. Yeah, we got the letter before he spoke to me the other day, and he asked me, and I thought he had actually contacted Arlene and said, I just said, hey, listen, but I went back to the permit. It's in the permit.
Yeah, it's a standard allowance that they can
For Clearwater,
stockpile up to
yeah.
500 yards.
Yeah.
So what's the purpose of only doing one side of the panel?
I think the real purpose is the line head is very difficult to get any noise out of. And rather than pay to have materials trucked around.
No, I look.
Yeah, I think they're
I
trying, I think they're
understand
trying
that,
to
but-
just do, I think they're trying to do it from their side more or less to save money. And they've done it quite a few years.
Yes.
They've done it just from the Clearwater side. This is nothing new.
How effective is the dredging when you're only doing one side? And is one side going to fill in so that the whole channel is only on one side of the?
Excavator reaches most of the way across there.
In a way, it's more their problem than anyone
Oh,
else's.
I know.
Yeah,
I know. I'm
but
just
we're-
curious.
Okay, well,
I would think the excavator can reach across the whole thing.
it can. You know what the biggest deal is? I think it's an internal issue. Let's put it this way. I'm not looking to air any laundry out here.
So you making a motion?
I'll make a motion, we approve this.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right.
Francis, I just want to add,
Yep.
administratively, since that's kind of what you're talking about with the permit, there is just a few different words they added. They wanted to make it clear the applicant pays, and they wanted to add in that fourth part about adding to the weir, that they want to keep this. So my point is, I guess, we're not going to require another application. We do need to make sure administratively we attach these two letters they sent to the existing permit, because it is a bit of a modification, even though it's basically clerical, it's just a few words. It is a little bit of a change to the existing permit. So Allison, Arlene, let's make sure that we add these letters to the file to the existing permit.
Yeah, I would think that every year you make a little change, and another again and again and again. By the time you go 5 years down the road, it could be
Put an
quite different.
application in. Yeah, I agree.
Administrative, payment of the bills. We have the East Hampton Marina, $81.40 for fuel, $259.29 for an oil change. Montauk Anglers Club, $591.34 oil change. Why is this such a drastic difference? These boats are the same.
Yeah. They charge a lot more in Montauk. We used to pull the boats and bring them to East Hampton.
Be worth it actually to pull them out and run them up there.
Maybe it's two boats. Maybe the 500 is.
Oh, wait,
They did
Check.
do more.
no, they may have done, because I had him get that, put that other boat in the water, the old boat.
Because it's just about the price of two boats, yeah.
Yeah, John, I think you may be right on that.
Check that so we're sure we're not paying twice as
Because
much.
it's double, yeah.
You
Single
can
oil
review the invoice. They did a few extra minor things, but the labor was like 400 in Montauk and 150 in
But it was just the
They
one
have the
boat?
details, yeah, for the one boat. It was just the one boat. And it was in the water. It wasn't hauled. They charged like 900 when they hauled it. Might be worth it to drive it to East Hampton.
Might be.
Riverhead Building Supply, $21.60. East Hampton Business Service, $25. Down East Services LLC, $160. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion, pay the bills.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we have minutes from August 26th available for review.
Yeah, I read the minutes, they look fine. Check them out.
You want to make a motion?
I make a motion to approve the minutes for August 26th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and did anyone get a chance to review the,
Milwaukee?
the Norwalkie statement?
No, I haven't.
I do.
Okay, any comments?
No comments, similar to last year's.
I'll make a motion to accept.
Motion to approve.
Second that.
All in favor? Anyone opposed? All right, anybody have anything else they want to discuss?
Yeah, just quickly that this is it, folks. The
Yeah.
digging has begun for digging of clams for our famous contest. East Hampton Trustees, largest clam contest. You can bring your clams into any of the seafood shops. But you can check our website or call to, any more information, but it's going to be a great day. The weather looks awesome. Free food, chowder, clam pies, clams on the half shell, hot dogs and hamburgers, face painting games for kids. So bring the whole family down. 12 to 3, I'm against Life Saving Station Museum. See you there. 12 to 3.
12 to 3.
The weather has been
Weather looks good.
so good to hear.
Yeah.
Right. That's it.
You heard the ad on LNG.
Oh, wow.
We actually had a little back and forth after the ad was over.
Nice.
Anyone else?
Chowder said, it seems a shame they're like crowning this giant clam and then they're making clam chowder.
That's right. So setup's at 8, so if everyone can get there at 8 if you can, and then I'll have specific kind of jobs in for everybody to do.
If I can get my hunting done, I'll be there.
And then there's cleanup after.
It's a seasonal thing. You got to do it when it's done.
You gotta do it.
Anyone else?
Motion to close.
Second.
In favor?
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.